Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Riancho, and it is officially week 1 of the NFL season. Let's talk wide receivers. For this video, I'm going to give you my top 50 rankings for the position in half PPR. This video will get more nuanced as the season goes on, and I can give you a lot more stats for this position. But until then, we're going to go on gut and also bring up the matchups. The cornerback opposite these receivers is always very important as far as how they're going to perform. So let's get going. We're going to start at the top, and number 1 should be obvious. It is Justin Jefferson versus Tampa Bay. Not much to say here. You drafted him at number 1 for a reason. He is truly elite, and going up against Jamel Dean and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers does not scare me. Should be a shootout, should get plenty of yards, go over 100, and find a touchdown. You are not benching Justin Jefferson. You're also not going to bench JaMarr Chase, who I have at number 2. That's where he was drafted. And while Denzel Ward is a legit corner, not an easy matchup, not going to scare me, I don't worry about it. JaMarr Chase, as long as Joe Burrow is the QB, is definitely in your lineup. You drafted these guys in the first round for a reason. They are elite. We're not benching them. Just like Tyreek Hill, the matchup, while it is a little concerning, not a reason to bench him at the Chargers and J.C. Jackson. Definitely not ideal, but J.C. Jackson should probably travel between him and Jaylen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill is too good to bench. You're keeping him in your lineup. But at number 4 is where it starts to get interesting. I expect a shootout in Kansas City, and Amon Ra St.Brown is going to be the clear number 1 target of Jared Goff. Going to see a ton of targets, probably a ton of garbage time, and I absolutely think he finds his way into the end zone. So I am starting him, not worried about Trent McDuffie opposite him on the defense. But at number 5, I am going with CeeDee Lamb, who I think will have a excellent season, a ton of targets headed his way, and an offense that's going to be a bit more pass-heavy, especially since I think they will be trailing and need to catch up. He's going to probably go up against rookie Deonte Banks. The Giants secondary doesn't scare me, and odds are the rookie is going to be a little bit overwhelmed in his Sunday Night Football debut. So CeeDee Lamb had an excellent close to last season. I think he's going to be great, go over 100 yards, and a touchdown. You are not benching CeeDee Lamb. But at number 6, I am giving a massive upgrade to Chris Olave of the Saints with a new quarterback, Derek Carr, who has a chip on his shoulder after being released by the Raiders. And this matchup is amazing. The Tennessee Titans were the last ranked defense when it comes to defending the pass. They finished 32nd in passing yards allowed, giving up a total of 275 passing yards per game last season. So this is an elite matchup. I absolutely want Chris Olave in my lineup this week. Coming at number 6, I'm extremely confident in him this week. But at number 7, a big red flag is Cooper Kupp, who is probably not going to suit up. I think that's probably the safest thing for him because it's a long season, and that hamstring injury cropped up again. I think if you drafted Cooper Kupp, while it's not ideal for him to be benched, I think long-term it's what's best for his overall health. They don't need to push it and for him to aggravate that injury even more. So he probably won't suit up, but if he does, I would have him here at number 7. You're not going to bench him, but you should temper expectations. He's still probably going to get like 8, 9, maybe 10 targets if he does play, even though he is going up against rookie Devon Witherspoon, the number 1 drafted corner in this year's class. That could turn into an ugly matchup, but if you have Cooper Kupp and he's healthy, you're not benching him. You drafted him really high for a reason. But at number 8, I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson versus Buffalo. That Aaron Rodgers connection going to be on display on Monday Night Football. But the matchup is not the best against Tre'Davious White and the Buffalo defense. There could be some issues, but Allen Lazard not fully healthy, and Garrett Wilson is by far and away their best weapon, especially when it comes to Breece Hall not being fully healthy either. So expect a lot of volume, especially in the second half. I see the Bills winning this game, and Aaron Rodgers needing to play catch-up, going to throw it a ton to Garrett Wilson. So the volume will carry him. That's why in the same game, I prefer Garrett Wilson over my number 9 wide receiver, Stefon Diggs, at the Jets. Diggs is going to have plenty of opportunities to be elite. I still have him top 10. You're not benching him. You drafted him in the first round for a reason. But we can't pretend like the matchup against Sauce Gardner isn't a difficult one. He was arguably the number 1 cornerback last season, and as a whole, the main reason why the Jets were the number 3 ranked passing defense in the league. This is not an easy matchup. So it's possible that Diggs underperforms, but it's week 1, and he's been a little bit upset in the offseason in terms of volume, and I don't think Dalton Kincaid is going to steal too much volume from him in the beginning of the season. So expect plenty of targets. I'm not benching Stefon Diggs, but here at number 9, I am tempering expectations a little bit. I expect to rank him higher than this next week and moving forward, but Sauce Gardner is definitely a downgrade. But at number 10, another elite receiver who deserves a downgrade because of the matchup. It's Davante Adams at Denver. Patrick Surtain is arguably the number 1 corner if you're not going to pick Sauce Gardner. Surtain is not a guy you want to mess with, so I am lowering my expectations for Adams, but you drafted him so high, it's really hard to bench him. I think in week 1, you're just going to roll with Adams and hope for the best. And hopefully Jimmy Garoppolo gets him the ball downfield, and he should find the end zone. That's usually what Adams can offer you on a consistent basis. So I'm going to trust him, although the matchup does scare me. In the same vein as Stefon Diggs, I just don't think you can bench either of these players. But lower expectations just a little bit. They're still inside my top 10. But at number 11, we are going with Calvin Ridley, a player I have fully endorsed on this channel. He was my number 12 receiver entering the season, and this matchup against the Colts no longer scares you. There is no more Stephon Gilmore in this secondary. So Ridley should have a coming out party. It's been a long time since he's been on the field, and there's a chip on his shoulder. You know Trevor Lawrence wants to get him the ball and get him comfortable and acclimated to what it's like in the NFL after almost 2 years since he's played a real game. So I think Calvin Ridley's going to have an excellent week 1. I want him in my lineup. But at number 12, I'm going with DK Metcalf versus the Rams, and Jackson Smith-Njigba is not going to play. He's dealing with that wrist injury, so that's more targets for Metcalf. And there was a bit of a kryptonite in the Rams secondary for the last several years, but that is no longer the case. Jalen Ramsey is long gone. So DK Metcalf, not going to have any problems. Definitely, I think he scores a touchdown in this matchup, and I have him here at number 12. He is an absolute must-start against the Rams, who I think they'll beat very comfortably. I see a lot of points scored for the Seahawks against a division rival. But at number 13, you might think I'm a little too low on this player because you drafted him very high, but this is where I have A.J. Brown of the Eagles. He's going up against New England, and expect him to get the Belichick treatment. He is going to be double-teamed heavily during this game. He is their best weapon in the passing game, and that's always the game plan for Belichick. Take away their number 1 option as best as possible. But I still have him in the top 15. I don't think you're benching him, but I am lowering expectations. I wouldn't be surprised if he fails to score a touchdown and only gives you like 6 catches for like 70 yards, which is decent. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not what you expected when you drafted him around the top 10 picks. So good luck with A.J. Brown this week. It will get better, but for that reason, I am lowering him a little bit, and it's why I have DeVonta Smith right behind him. I'm actually very tempted to put DeVonta Smith above A.J. Brown, but in reality, DeVonta Smith is going to go up against the Patriots' best cornerback. A.J. Brown will get double-teamed, and I think the best pass catcher for the Eagles in this matchup is actually going to be Dallas Goedert. I see a very good game for Goedert, and I think the run game going to be pretty solid as well. But DeVonta Smith, I'm still trusting. I see plenty of volume for him. There won't be any double coverage, so Jalen Hurts should look his way. I have DeVonta Smith at number 14. I'm also starting him, who you also drafted pretty high. But at number 15, I'm going with T. Higgins at Cleveland, and he might get some snaps against Denzel Ward, but he normally always gets the number 2 corner in terms of matchups. With JaMarr Chase alongside him, it's kind of an easy spot for T. Higgins. So you always trust him, and I don't think you're going to bench him. It should be fine. But maybe Joe Burrow is a little bit rusty coming off of that calf strain. He did not practice very much in the preseason during late training camp. So I'm still starting T. Higgins, but I'm just a little bit worried about this Bengals offense as a whole. They might sputter a little bit in the first half. Probably after halftime, they're going to be really good, really solid. This should probably turn into a shootout. So I'm not benching T. Higgins, but that's why I have him at number 15. Number 16, though, Amari Cooper versus Cincinnati in the exact same game. The Bengals have a revamped, technically, secondary. No more Eli Apple, but they did bring in Chidobe Awuzie, and Awuzie is not terrible. So he doesn't scare me, but Amari Cooper at number 16 in his first, real game with Deshaun Watson. I'm not counting those games at the end of last season. Watson was very rusty. This one should be good. Cooper should have a very solid game, probably finds the end zone. I see a shootout in this matchup. So while I do expect Nick Chubb to really be the workhorse for the Browns in this one, Cooper should still have a good game, should still put up big numbers. But at number 17, I got Mike Williams, my boy, versus Miami, and I am not totally sure what the cornerback usage is going to look like opposite the Chargers receivers in this game, because odds are he's going to get a lot of Xavier Howard because there's no Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey got hurt in the offseason. And opposite Xavier Howard is Eli Apple. So I see a little bit of both, but there's also a lot of reports that Mike Williams is going to be running out of the slot this season. So that could also mix things up. I think Kellen Moore is going to dial it up, going to have a lot of big plays downfield, and Mike Williams could very easily finish top 10. I think he's going to have a very big game while he is fully healthy, but you never know what could happen. It could go to Keenan Allen in the red zone. Mike Williams is always a bit of a boom-bust option, so for those reasons, I have him just at number 17, but I'm very, very tempted to rank him higher. There's always the factor that he puts up a dud, and that is where the risk assessment comes in with Mike Williams. So number 17, still going to roll the dice, still starting him, but we'll see what happens against this Dolphins defense. I'm not totally sure where Mike Williams is going to line up the majority of the snaps, but I'm starting him. That's for sure. Jaylen Waddle, I have a little bit lower than typical. He did deal with a little bit of an injury in late preseason, and it's possible that kind of hinders him just a little bit, but he's got elite speed. He can break one to the house from anywhere, and he will not be getting the majority of J.C. Jackson coverage, which is a good sign, but he's still getting Asante Samuel Jr. lining up opposite him, which is not the best matchup. There could be some interceptions for Tua. I worry about this matchup a little bit for the Dolphins. The Chargers defense kind of exposed the Dolphins' offensive game plan last season. So Waddle is a player I have lower than I expect to rank him rest of season, but I think starting next week, he's going to be back inside the top 15 very comfortably. I think he'll be just fine. I see a 5-game win streak for the Dolphins starting in week 2, but week 1, I think they'll be a little bit underwhelming, and Waddle will probably be the loser in terms of volume. Tyreek Hill, I'm not worried about, but Waddle, I have a little bit of hesitancy ranking any higher than this. So that's where he comes in at number 18. You're still probably not going to bench him. You drafted him pretty high. Number 19, though, I have Christian Watson at Chicago, and there's no one in the Chicago secondary that scares you. Their defense is not their strength anymore. They were pretty terrible last season, and Watson has that elite speed. So he can definitely pop off for a massive game at any time, but I am a little bit worried about Jordan Love. Hard to fully trust what we saw in the preseason, and we're going to see what he can do. So I am holding off until ranking Christian Watson inside the top 15, and if this game looks terrible for Jordan Love and he struggles to get Watson the ball, I might be lowering Watson in the rankings later on. But I had him at number 19 coming into the season in my wide receiver rankings, so this is where I have him week 1. We're going to see what happens, but odds are he gets the most volume. Odds are the Bears win this game, and Watson is targeted heavily in the second half as they try to catch up. So I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be just fine, but a little worried he does not find the end zone, and that caps his upside for sure. But at number 20, I got Keenan Allen versus the Dolphins, who should see a little bit more of the Eli Apple coverage. That's definitely a good sign for him. Keenan Allen's healthy, but like last season, he could go down with injury early in the season. I mean, last year it was week 1 before halftime, and they definitely have plans for the Super Bowl, definitely want him healthy for the playoffs. If he does come up limping, then they're not going to push it with him. They will hold out. But it's still week 1. He's probably going to be fine. He's probably going to finish the game. And if you have Allen on your team, I doubt you're going to bench Keenan. The volume is usually always there. But it's going to be very interesting to see how much Quentin Johnston factors in, if Josh Palmer is also a little bit in the mix. But these top 2 receivers for Justin Herbert, definitely top 20 plays. I am starting Keenan Allen if I have him. But Jahan Dotson is who I have at number 21 versus Arizona. The Cardinals' defense doesn't scare me at all. And Terry McLaurin is dealing with turf toe. So Dotson going to see a lot of volume, especially early on in the season. He was better on a per-game basis in fantasy last season over Terry. So I ranked him much higher than I ranked Terry coming into the year. And I think he's really going to help you a lot in the beginning of the season. And this week, I see the Commanders winning. If anyone scores a touchdown for the Commanders, I think it's most likely going to go to Jahan Dotson. So I'm pretty comfortable starting him. I feel like he will find the end zone, will go over double-digit fantasy points. And at number 21, I think he's one of the best flex plays that you can start in week 1. But at number 22, I'm going with Chris Godwin at Minnesota. We'll see if Baker Mayfield can get the job done. But it's really this matchup that has me excited. The Vikings defense is really bad. They ranked number 31 against the pass last season, giving up almost 270 passing yards per game. Really good spot for Chris Godwin, and he should see the most targets in this offense. So I'm trusting him, and we'll see if I'm wrong about Baker. Maybe he prefers throwing it to Mike Evans, but everything points to Godwin being the number 1 in this offense. So that should be good. There's going to be some heavy garbage time usage for the Bucs receivers. So I'll start Godwin with confidence. There's at least a good floor with Chris Godwin. But at number 23, I'm going with Deebo Samuel at Pittsburgh. Tempted to rank him higher, but my gut tells me that the 49ers will lose this game, and I got a bad feeling about Brock Purdy coming off of elbow surgery against TJ Watt and that elite Steelers defense. I feel like it's going to be a very underwhelming performance for the 49ers defense, offense, that is. So not excited. I think there's some really rough spots here for all of the 49ers skill players, but you drafted Deebo pretty high. I think you're probably going to keep him in your lineup. And it's not like the Steelers secondary really scares you. I just think Purdy is going to struggle, and that's the main reason why I have Deebo only at number 23. He was actually really underwhelming from a fantasy perspective last season. So hopefully that improves, but this week I'm a little bit worried about it. We will see, but he's in the flex range. I'd still probably give him a start. I'm expecting about 12 or so points for Deebo Samuel, between 12 and 10, something like that. But number 24, I have Marquise Brown at Washington, and the Commanders actually had a pretty good passing defense last season. But one reason why I trust Marquise Brown so much this year is because the Cardinals are going to suck, and in the first half, they're going to give up a massive lead. By the time we hit early fourth quarter, almost every single week, the opposing defense isn't really going to give a shit, and they're just going to give up a lot of chunk plays just to keep the clock running. Marquise Brown wouldn't shock me if he put up 80 receiving yards in the fourth quarter alone. So Marquise Brown should have a very safe floor all season long. The volume's definitely going to be there for him, and we'll see if they try and spotlight Zach Ertz as a possible trade candidate. But I still think Marquise Brown's going to get plenty of volume. Very, very unlikely that he scores a touchdown, however. I don't see that happening, so it's really just volume that keeps Marquise Brown's floor high. If you play in full PPR, I trust him a little bit more, but in half PPR, it is a little more touchdown dependent. So somewhere around 10, 11 points. That's the projection that I have for these flex plays ranked between wide receiver 21 and 30. But number 25, I got Tyler Lockett versus the Rams, and it's possible I'm too low on Lockett. I see a lot of points scored for the Seahawks against the Rams. Not going to be a very competitive matchup, especially if Cooper Kupp is unavailable. So maybe Lockett should be higher, but I see this as more of a DK Metcalf game, and I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of sit their starters at the end of the matchup, because I don't see a very competitive score here. So if Lockett finds the end zone, he will finish better than this. But I have him at number 25, so he's definitely in flex territory, and based on where you drafted him, this is a little bit of a bigger endorsement than what it took to draft him on your team. So with no JSN, he should get a little more volume, should be fine. Maybe I'm too low. We'll see if I change my mind as we approach Sunday. But number 26 is the wide receiver 1 for the Denver Broncos, Courtland Sutton, versus the Las Vegas Raiders. And while I did take the Raiders to win this game, that just means there's going to be more of a pass-heavy approach in the second half as the Broncos try to catch up. And Jerry Jeudy is not available, and this is a very good matchup if they didn't improve much from last season, which I don't expect to be the case. Last year they ranked 29th against the pass. So the Raiders are a good spot for Sutton, and he should see close to 10 targets, should get a lot of volume, but I'm very skeptical that he actually finds the end zone, and it's possible that this is a Marvin Mims breakout game as a rookie in his debut. So Sutton should be okay from a floor perspective. I see about 10 points or so for him, but without that touchdown, I don't think he's going to be like truly elite. I don't think he's going to be top 20 when the week is said and done. So good luck with Sutton. He should be fine, but if you drafted him, you planned on trying to use him early, this is a solid spot for him. He's in the flex territory, that's for sure. But number 27, I got Brandin Aiyuk at Pittsburgh, and he's probably going to line up against the rookie Joey Porter Jr. a little bit more than Deebo Samuel will, so maybe that benefits him. I was tempted to rank him above Deebo this week, but like I mentioned with Brock Purdy, a little bit worried that he is very rusty coming off of that elbow surgery, and I have a feeling the Steelers are going to wreck the Niners offense in week 1. So Aiyuk is a player I'm a little bit worried about, but should probably put up like 75 receiving yards. Don't think he finds the end zone, however. I think the volume should carry him to a usable game, but I am a little bit worried about it. At this point, I'm starting to pump the brakes, and unless you are kind of desperate, I'm probably going to try and keep these players on the bench in a typical 10-team league. If it's a 12-team league or higher, then these guys are probably locked into your lineup no matter what. And this is a name you probably expected to be ranked higher on this list. I got DJ Moore versus the Packers at number 28. And while DJ Moore had an excellent preseason, a lot of those big plays were screen passes that he took to the house, a lot of yards after the catch. That's not going to be the case every single week. So he's still getting the ball thrown to him from Justin Fields, not an elite thrower of the football. And the worst possible spot for him in week 1 is going up against Jair Alexander, one of the premier, at least top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL. Very tough matchup, and I could see a very rough game for DJ Moore. So even though I chose the Bears to win this game, I think DJ Moore may struggle in his regular season debut, and at number 28, I am a little bit hesitant to fully endorse him, but he is top 30. You could do a lot worse, and odds are you're probably going to start him. I'm expecting like 9 or so points for DJ Moore. He should be okay, but I'd be a little bit skeptical to start him because I think he's very touchdown dependent this week. We'll see if that happens, but I think that's fair. Number 28 against Jair Alexander, pretty rough spot to be in. But number 29, I have DeAndre Hopkins at New Orleans, and while he is fully healthy, while Ryan Tannehill needs to keep his job, probably going to play a little bit better early in the season, this is a rough matchup. Not only were the Saints number 2 in passing defense last year, but he's going to go head-to-head against Marshawn Lattimore, also one of the best corners in the league. So this matchup does scare me, and DeAndre Hopkins is getting a little older. it's possible that he's not the player that we remember him being just a few years ago. So at number 29, I'm also a little bit hesitant to fully endorse. Kind of doubt that he puts up over 10 points. Going to be rather touchdown dependent this week, and that is a low-end flex play in an average league setting. So you could bench him, but odds are you're probably going to start him. However, I am a little bit hesitant to be excited about it. I'd rather give it one more week. I think he'll be better starting in week 2 because this matchup is just really, really difficult against Lattimore. But number 30, also a wide receiver 1, getting a very tough matchup. I have Drake London versus Carolina here at number 30 because J.C. Horn is not a corner you want to dismiss. I do think the Falcons will win, but I think, if anything, it's going to be on the back of Bijan Robinson. I don't expect Desmond Ridder to do a ton in this game. A divisional matchup can always be unpredictable, but if anyone's going to be effective in the passing game, I expect Kyle Pitts to have a better receiving stat line in this matchup because the J.C. Horn matchup does scare me considerably. I wouldn't rank him top 5, but he's arguably top 10 at the cornerback position. At worst, he's like top 12. So that is a downgrade for London, and we have yet to see him play with Desmond Ridder and Kyle Pitts. Now Bijan Robinson's in the mix, and this is a run-first offense. I think they'll have the lead, and they probably won't throw it too much in the fourth quarter. So if he doesn't get in the end zone, he's not going to go over 10 points. I would not expect that from Drake London this week, but he will get better. I think he will improve over time. Number 31, however, now we're in legitimate low-end flex territory. You kind of have to be a little bit more desperate to totally trust these players, and it's a bit more boom bust. But if anyone is the definition of boom or bust, it would be Gabriel Davis at the Jets. Maybe Sauce Gardner really limits Stefon Diggs to the point that Davis is elite. He always has that 25, 30-point upside any given game, but he can also put up 5 points and really ruin your week. He could be the reason you lose as well as the reason you win. So good luck with Gabe Davis. It's a bit of a dart throw, and while it's probably more likely to hit given Diggs' tough matchup, I'm still a little bit skeptical. Hard to rank him top 30. That's why I have him at number 31. But number 32 is Christian Kirk at the Colts, who should have a pretty good season, but I think week 1 is going to be a little bit more about Calvin Ridley. I think Doug Peterson really wants to get Ridley's confidence up, and Christian Kirk probably going to take a little bit of a backseat in terms of the target share, and if there's anyone scoring a touchdown, I think it's very likely to be Ridley over Kirk. So we'll see what happens, but I'm lowering my expectations a little bit on Christian Kirk. I expect to rank him higher the rest of the season. But number 33, I have Michael Pittman versus Jacksonville, and I might be too low on Pittman because he is the wide receiver 1. There's no Taylor, and there's going to be a lot of catch-up mode, a lot of garbage time for the Colts. But it is a rookie quarterback making his debut, one that didn't have a ton of experience in college, and I see a lot of hiccups for Anthony Richardson and not an elite catch percentage for the receivers in this offense. So even though it's a good matchup, the Jaguars ranked 28th in passing defense, so a top 5 matchup for the position. I'm still a little bit worried to fully endorse it. I want to see it before I totally trust it in this offense. It's a little bit hard to fully predict. But at number 33, you might be in the spot where you're going to light him up. It could be a lot worse. I think the volume should be there, but I'm a little bit hesitant to trust that there's a lot of touchdowns available in this offense. If anything, I think Richardson might be rushing them in with his legs. So good luck with Pittman. I think you're going to need it. And also good luck with Mike Evans at Minnesota. Like I mentioned with Godwin, this is a good matchup. The Vikings ranked second worst at defending the pass, and Evans could possibly be one of Baker Mayfield's favorite targets, but we just haven't seen it with Baker. in this offense, and Evans was extremely unpredictable last season. He was very underwhelming, and if it wasn't for that big blow-up game in Week 17, in order to surpass that 1,000-yard threshold, Mike Evans would have been really bad from a stat line perspective last year. So Evans does scare me, but at number 34, you could do a lot worse. I'm expecting somewhere around like 6-7 points, maybe 8 or so in half PPR. Nothing that's really going to move the needle, but a solid floor play. You could do a lot worse than Mike Evans. So I get it if you're going to start him, but I'd rather not. Number 35, I have Jordan Addison versus Tampa Bay, also expecting about 7 points or so versus the Buccaneers. And it's possible that he gets in the end zone, definitely goes over double digits. I see a very good game for Kirk Cousins, but I think it's going to be more on the back of Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. And Addison, in his rookie debut, could possibly be a little bit overwhelmed on some of those plays. So we'll see what happens, but he's going to have a very good season. I expect him to slowly creep up these rankings as the season progresses, but at this point, it's very touchdown dependent, and I would rather avoid it if I could. But number 36 and number 37 are the two Pittsburgh Steelers receivers. I have George Pickens at number 36 and Deontay Johnson at number 37, and I have a very hard time predicting who will see the most targets in this offense. I think week 1 is more of a wait and see mode for this Steelers wide receiver core. I think if anyone is going to have a really good game, it's Pat Freiermuth, and it's hard to say which receiver here is going to see the bulk of the Charvarius Ward coverage, because based on volume, you would expect that Deontay is the number 1 receiver, should deserve that respect, but I see it really a lot closer in terms of the gap between these two players. I see Pickens as the more likely player to find the end zone, and if I was going to take a shot on one of these two guys, I would prefer George Pickens. But I'm going to wait and see. It is a tough matchup against San Francisco. I think this is a heavy defensive game, and I don't expect a ton of points on the board for either offense. So Pickens and Deontay scare me a little bit, but the rest of the season, I think we'll be a little bit more comfortable knowing who to start, which one you want. But if I had to pick one, give me George Pickens. But still, I think he's very touchdown dependent, not super confident that you can totally trust him or Deontay just yet. So good luck if you're starting either of them. I think you're going to need it against the Niners. But number 38, I have Brandin Cooks at the Giants. Kind of want to rank him higher, but we're going to see what he looks like as the number 2 in the Dallas Cowboys offense. I'm a little bit worried he could get forgotten a little bit, especially early in the season as Dak may struggle. And I have a bad feeling about the Cowboys' Mike McCarthy offense, especially early on in the year. And Brandin Cooks is not a player I am confident in just yet starting in my lineup. On the road, I think the Cowboys could struggle a little bit. So at number 38, I'm going to hold off on starting him. But at number 39 and 40, I am extremely tempted to put both of these players in my starting lineup and rank them way, way higher. I have Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney back-to-back at number 39 and 40 versus the Detroit Lions, and this matchup is going to be one of the best that you could ask for. I doubt that they're significantly improved on defense, but the Lions' passing defense was the 3rd worst in the league last year. Definitely a good spot to be in for opposing wide receivers. So one of these two players is going to have an excellent game, but maybe I'm wrong and it's just heavily favoring Travis Kelce in terms of volume. I see a massive shootout, however, so odds are these players are going to put up good stats, and probably one of them is going to go off, but I can't tell you who that is. Toney is coming off of some surgery about a month ago, and Sky Moore is the slot receiver. It's possible that MVS vultures the touchdown, and neither of them are viable. So if you're feeling lucky, if you're feeling desperate, go ahead and start one of these Chiefs receivers. I think there's a lot of upside, but it's very hard to specifically predict what will happen, and that's why I have them ranked so low. I feel like one of these guys is going to emerge, and I'm going to start ranking them in the top 25 very soon. But until that happens, I can't say with confidence what will happen, and that's why I'd rather play it cautiously and rather keep them on the bench. But if you want to start them, I get it it is a very, very good matchup. But number 41, we're going to go a little more rapid fire through the top 50 here. But I got Michael Thomas versus Tennessee. Excellent matchup. He could start off red hot like he did last season with a few touchdowns. However, he could get injured at any point, and I am simply not a long-term believer in Michael Thomas. So I didn't want to draft him, and I don't really want to start him. So good luck if that's what you're going to do, but I'd rather not do it. Number 42, a player I view very similarly, Odell Beckham Jr. versus Houston. I'm very tempted to rank him higher because I do think he's going to score some touchdowns for the Ravens early on in the season. However, this is a great matchup against the rushing defense. The Texans cannot stop the run, and that's why I think it's more of a J.K. Dobbins, Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards type of game. I think Mark Andrews is probably the only safe pass catcher you want to start before you see this offense on the field. So good luck with OBJ. I'd rather bench him. But the number one receiver for Carolina is Adam Thielen, and against Atlanta, it's a good spot. Jeff Okudah, who they traded for, is questionable, and if he doesn't play, then this defense is really, really bad against the pass. So maybe Thielen could be usable, but I would like to see what Bryce Young looks like before I trust his receivers. I'd rather pass on Thielen at this exact moment in time. But number 44, I got Zay Flowers versus Houston. He could be the one you want in the Ravens offense, but we just don't know what to expect just yet, so I'm going to hold off as well on starting Zay Flowers in a good matchup for the running backs. But number 45, I got Elijah Moore versus Cincinnati. He probably is ranked too low. Now that I see him here, I'm a little bit skeptical. I'm too low on him, but hard to fully predict, know exactly what to expect, and I see a big game for Nick Chubb, and I think David Njoku probably going to vulture a touchdown from Elijah Moore, and I'd rather see it before I endorse it. So going to hold off with Elijah Moore, but very tempting to rank him higher. MVS, I have at number 46, and like I mentioned with Tony and Sky Moore, excellent matchup here, but do you really trust it? All the touchdowns could go to Kelsey. None of these receivers could do anything, and you wouldn't be shocked at all. It's very volatile to pick a specific Chiefs receiver at this point in time. So good luck with MVS, but I'd rather pass. I'd also rather hold off on Marvin Mims, who should see some more volume with no Jerry Jeudy, but until we see him on the field, it's hard to trust the rookie in his NFL debut. It's a good matchup, though. It's very tempting, but I'm going to hold off at number 47. I am benching this player. But number 48 is a starting number one receiver in the NFL. It's JuJu Smith-Schuster of the Patriots going up against the Eagles. No thank you. This was the number one passing defense in the league last year, and they're going to be excellent yet again. I am holding off on the Patriots receiving core until we see what it looks like. JuJu should be the number one, but I can't say with confidence that he's actually going to be worth starting on a weekly basis. So this week, no thank you. And at number 49, a player that could vault up these rankings very quickly if Cooper Kupp does indeed sit. But I got Van Jefferson tentatively at number 49. Against Seattle, though, he may have to go up against Devon Witherspoon, and that rookie cornerback could be elite, could be a tough spot. So maybe you just want to avoid him altogether. It's possible that Witherspoon just shuts him down, and Van Jefferson is not viable. It's possible he's a better play with Cooper Kupp alongside him than not. So no thank you. I will update these rankings later on in the week. Maybe he'll crack the top 30, but I doubt it. And lastly in this list, it's Darnell Mooney versus Green Bay, and he should see a little bit of extra volume with Jair Alexander covering DJ Moore, but I want to see this offense before I start starting Darnell Mooney with confidence. I'd rather pass for the time being. But those are my top 50 receivers. These are the top 40 receivers. I think really the only players that you should be considering in your lineup this week. I am starting the top 20 with absolute confidence. Definitely the top 10 should be really good, but I would say once you hit like Cooper Kupp, Garrett Wilson, don't expect more than 20 points. However, once you hit Marquise Brown, Tyler Lockett, I still think you should expect about 12, 11 points from these receivers. The receiver position was getting way more volume last season, and I think that's definitely the tiebreaker when making your flex decisions. So I still see somewhere between 10 and 8 points all the way through like Brandin Cooks, I think you could do a lot worse. They're decent floor plays, and that's definitely some solid options there. But once we hit Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, it starts to get risky, and I'd rather just start benching those players and keep them out of my starting lineup for the time being. We will gain some more clarity as the weeks go on, and we'll see who emerges lower on this list. But that's going to be it for me. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I will have quarterback, defense, and tight end rankings up very soon. But if you want the running back rankings, you can check that out right here. And until then, I will see you in the next video. My name is Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.